Here to discuss the current state of the security market, new threats, and top areas of cybersecurity investments, please welcome SHI Chief Technology Officer Jordan Mauriello, along with founder and CEO of NightDragon, Dave DeWalt.
I feel like I should lay on the couch, right? And he should just interview me. We'll
This
just
is a
do
therapy session.
A little therapy session for cyber. It'd be perfect.
I feel like every CISO could use a therapy session every once in a while these days.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? You guys good? All right.
Well, we're super excited to be here with you this morning. For those of you guys that don't know, and we just got the very brief name intro here, Dave DeWalt, a big name in cybersecurity. For those of you that don't know, Dave is a four-time CEO, including FireEye, McAfee, Documentum, and currently NightDragon. NightDragon is honestly one of the most successful investment firms in cybersecurity right now, and Dave can give us some great history on that, maybe even some of the history around the name and where that came from too as well. It's also recently named, and congratulations for this, Wall Street Journal top 10 board directors list. That's quite an achievement to actually manage. It's held over 40 roles, including really influential companies like Delta Airlines and Exelon. Delta, he served as chairman of safety and security for more than a decade. He's been advisor to the Office of National Cyber Director, especially around cyber workforce development too as well. We've done a lot of work there, and then regular appearances on CNBC, Wall Street. We keep going, right? Wow. I say this, because I think it's important to understand the level of expertise and credentials that we're talking with. And as we interview and talk with Dave, I think how important and authoritative some of the statements are, and that we can take some of them. It's worth taking notes. It's worth listening here as we dig into some, I think, really cool topics today.
I just want to start out by saying, if I could, just thank you for having me, Jordan, and to Ty Lee and to the whole management team at SHI. It's such a quality company, a quality leadership team. I love what Stratascale's been doing in the cyber division, the AI stuff. I mean, I'm just so proud. I spoke here once before, but nobody raised their hand for 15 years of coming to these things, which I think is the last time I spoke at this thing when I was CEO of McAfee. So I can't remember the exact date, but somewhere between 2006 and 2012, I was here at one of these events. So it's great to be back, and we were in a different building at the time, but it's all cool. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's our honor. So we're going to start with the kind of, I think, maybe the typical, but I'd love to get your perspective on this. This is state of the cyber union, and we're operating in maybe one of the most volatile threat environments in history, and match that with unprecedented technology innovation and change that we're seeing right now, whether that's compute power or AI or all the other things that we're seeing that have impacted cyber right now. And just your thoughts, how would you characterize the state of the union in cybersecurity right now?
Anybody want to help me here? This one's challenging. Can you guys see slides for a second? I don't know, it's up there somewhere, it's just going. But I called it the perfect cyber storm, and I've called it this way for 20-some years. And it's just amazing to kind of still be up here 20 years later talking about a cyber storm. And back 20 years ago, what did we talk about? A cyber storm was all this technology inertia, right? All this incredible adoption of technology. Back then, it was like, hey, there's a thing called the internet, right? But all these things that we've adopted for technology has done what? Created an increased attack surface. What's the increased attack surface done? Created more vulnerabilities. Why do we have more vulnerabilities? We don't have security by design or resiliency by design. What did that do? That created more attackers. And now we have thousands of attackers. Last year alone, I didn't see this stat, we saw 1,254 new threat groups. Imagine that. It's almost a third more groups attacking you than we had the year prior. Because of the way the internet works and the way now geopolitical tensions are happening, we're seeing all this capitalism and crime. We're seeing all this nation-state activity. We're seeing crypto and blockchain giving an anonymity to the attack model, and it just grows. And then what do? You pour geopolitical tensions on top of that, and then you start to get this perfect storm. And look at the headlines that you're seeing. What a world we live in. I mean, my phone's been blowing up for 3 days with Israel and Iran. I do a lot of work in the national security areas, and it's just incredible. Look at Russia, Ukraine. Look at what's happening. And cyber is an integrated component to all of these attack models. And now we have new models like influence operations that are unbelievable at scale. Yep. And why do we have that? We have social media platforms that don't have trust and safety to information you're reading. So deep fakes has now enabled virality of fake information at a very fast pace, which is scaring people and influencing people. So we have this, I'm not trying to be ominous, but what a world we're living in with the amount of threat actors, the asymmetric environment we have, the geopolitical tensions. It's just incredible. And now we have this physical cyber unification problem that's occurring where we actually have executive protection requirements at levels that we've never seen before. How many of you have tried to implement an executive VIP security solution for your companies in the last year? Some of you done? A lot of people are starting to look at how do I take the CEO and the named executive officers of a Fortune 500 company and protect them. Let's just say most CEOs of Fortune 500 companies don't want all their information into a SOC somewhere. But we almost have to start to integrate like that because there's death threats, there's issues that are happening all over the world that makes us have to protect our executives in ways that we've never had to think about before, especially after United Healthcare's incident. I'm on the board of Delta Airlines and Exelon, as Jordan mentioned. I mean, we have to protect these CEOs of big consumer-facing companies more than we ever had to do before. So this threat environment's really interesting. And then you saw the stats up 67% with AI led just in the last quarter. And anybody think that this is slowing down anytime soon? No. So this is the world we're in. And I have a lot of empathy for the CISOs out there, having run big organizations before. It's a tough job. And it's the NHL playoffs. I don't know if you're Stanley Cup fans, but like being a goalie, right? They're throwing 40 or 50 pucks at you every day, and you got to save them all. And this is the world we're in. It's a tough environment with the cyberstorm. But I was going to ask a question. You guys, Matt was funny as hell, wasn't he? I love him. We got to put him on radio. That guy was awesome. Anybody know where NightDragon came from? So I named my company after a famous cyber attack in 2008. So after all the years of being a CEO, I was like, all right, I got to do something different. 17 years and 68 public company quarters. I'm like, it's like dog years running companies. But I was like, all right, I'll do something different. I'll do investments back into cyber, and I got to come up with a cool name. So there was 3 cyber attacks when I was CEO of McAfee. One called Aurora, one called NightDragon, and one called Shady Rat. Shady Rat I ruled out pretty quick because I didn't think anybody would take my money if it was called Shady Rat. So we came up with NightDragon. And the 3 people who named it were George Kurtz, Dmitry Alperovich, and another researcher who then founded CrowdStrike. But I laughed a lot because it was like Dancing Bear, Fancy Bear, what was it, Purple, I missed a couple of them there.
Purple Typhoon.
Yeah, but everybody names them differently. So my company's named after a famous attack called NightDragon. So that's where it comes from. So pretty cool. There you go. Anyway, back to topic. Where were we?
So as we're looking at state of the cyber union, and I think you captured a lot of key points here. Right? I think the amount of revenue that's being driven even in cybercrime, we see cybercrime as a service. We see organizations making hundreds of millions of dollars a year doing this right now. And that has accelerated things. But we've also seen some acceleration now, and there's a dynamic change in the impact of AI. And from your perspective, how do you think AI has impacted this for better or for worse?
There's some days like you wake up and you're like, oh my God, AI's here, right? That's how I feel. Like it's an incredible opportunity. I mean, my whole time being in high tech now, and I won't date myself, but it's been a few generational technologies, and every time one's come along, you're like, wow, look what we could do. And AI might be the biggest we've ever seen. I mean, we all know that, right? It's coming. And it could be the greatest opportunity to create more equality in defense and offense, where autonomy and agentic capabilities now give us the ability to scale our operations in ways we never could do before. How exciting is it with the next generation SOC opportunity? What's going on? But the companies are still in early phases of really deploying that. If you go to RSA a year ago, they were all adding like a ChatGPT thing to their product. And this year was like the year of agentic. It was like agentic, autonomy, AI. And we're watching new companies that are really exciting to really change the course, in my opinion, of our scale opportunity. Scale of data, scale of process response, the scale of being able to automate. It's kind of all just about here. I think in 1 year from RSA, we're going to see real opportunity to deploy highly scalable autonomous systems into our operations. Many of you are starting to do that already, but it's really coming. That's exciting. On the other side of it is, guess what the attackers are doing? Automating edge-based AI, offensive capabilities in ways that I haven't seen. And a lot of the funding that's now going in, especially with this administration, is cyber offense, which is amazing. We haven't really funded cyber offense before.
Yeah.
And boy, are we starting to see that happen. And then when you get a glimpse of what the offense can do, wow. I mean, constantly, you think automated pen testing is good for defense? You should see automated pen testing for the offense. And you start to see where the balance is going. So it's a scary time.
Yep.
Where defense has to keep up with offense like always before. But boy, do we have opportunity with defense right now. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I think the intersection of AI and proactive security for defenders is actually really, really important right now. Yeah. We were chatting about this earlier, and just there's more to it than kind of the obvious use cases. I'm sure everyone in here has probably seen at least 15 AI SOAR solutions that are supposed to fully automate your SOC right now. Right, I do it. We hear them and see them all the time. They all want us to work with them too as well. And there's some of that out there that's really good right now. But how well thought through are you looking at the proactive AI solutions where you're doing cyber threat exposure monitoring, how AI is applying to things like Horizon 3 or one of the businesses like that, where we're applying AI to penetration testing? The value of that can dramatically increase too as well. So something to be considering, AI impact for good for us as cyber defenders.
Yeah, love it, Jordan. You're right on with everything you're saying. I have this cool company I got to tell you about just for a second, because the scale of data is what's impressed me about this company. I don't know if you ever heard of a company called Data Miner, but Data Miner is a company, funny, they named themselves no E at the end of miner. I guess it was vogue to always have R's at the end, but they're called Data Miner. But what this company does is can take in 6 billion signals a day into 50 vectored LLMs and create near 100% efficacy of event alerts. And they can do it, mostly they came out of the physical world, where they're taking millions of exquisite feeds in, billions of alerts into a large language model and processing it. On top of that, they're processing video, sound, images, and language content in 150 languages simultaneously, what's called multimodal AI fusion, and then creating event reports from the data. So if there's an event in Israel and Iran, somebody posts it online and it's in Hebrew or it's in Farsi, you can see the event in milliseconds happening with this type of tool. And then what they've been able to do is build all this agentic, what's called intelligent agents around it. So now they fire off 1 million agents to collect more information about a topic, automating entire research around an event that's occurring, like real time. So now instead of writing mandiant reports like I used to do every month or quarter, these things are written by the minute. So the speed of AI, processing of data and signals, is here today.
Yep.
And that's just one example of many. It's pretty cool stuff that's happening.
I thought an interesting pivot for us to make would be to actually talk about cybersecurity and startups in cybersecurity from the investor's point of view, right? So we have one of the most successful investment firms here and the leader of that. And a lot of times what we're all looking at in cybersecurity as leaders and as practitioners is leading edge technology, right? We're looking at new innovation. We're looking at how new problems can be solved, how we can keep up with a new attacker. And sometimes we're often evaluating businesses that are very early stage. And I thought it would be really useful for the audience to get insights for you when you're looking at and evaluating cybersecurity startups. What are some of the core traits and signals you're looking for as something that would merit investment from you?
I always call it the 3 T's. So I use acronyms for everything, like cyber professionals do, right? I notice you can speak in all acronyms too, Jordan, so we're good at that.
It's that military background.
The 3 T's, I call it team, tech, and TAM, right? So what do you look for when you're making an investment? You're really trying to figure out, first and foremost, is the TAM big enough, the total addressable market big enough, right? If we're going to put 100 million of capital into a company, they've got to have a multi-billion-dollar TAM. And when you look at cyber today, it's kind of a tale of 2 cities. You guys have probably seen this. You have early stage and you have the titans. And it's like, I call it the clash of the titans at the top. You have the cyber titans now, a handful of them, exceeding 100 billion in market caps for the first time. It's amazing. When I was CEO of McAfee, I almost did 3 billion of revenue and $1 billion of EBITDA, and I sold the company for less than 8 billion. Today, that would probably be worth 100 billion. So you start to see the market TAM size is growing in ways that we've never seen. Palantir is now worth 300 billion. Anduril's approaching those levels. Look at NVIDIA and other of the Magnificent Seven kind of market cap sizes. Cyber and platforms are coming in same size. So what do? Buy everything up that's a small company and bundle it with their platform. It's called like best of suite, right? So you see all that trend. So when you're investing, you look at, can you find one that fits into the suite of tomorrow? It could be AI operations, it could be something at quantum, it could be something somewhere that really is a new green field that the big titans want to acquire. Or on the other end of the spectrum is, what's the new titans coming? Like I thought Wiz was a titan until Google came around and spent $32 billion making them the titan. And so you start to see the tale of two cities. In the middle, there's almost 3,000 cyber companies kind of stuck because they can't grow fast enough to become a titan, and they're too big to get acquired. So who then buys them? Private equity titans. And then they form a new platform. So you're watching all these dynamics of what's going on in the market, small companies getting really big valuations like AI right now, and then you have the bigger companies acquiring the best of those, and then you have private equity pretty much buying everything else that's good. So it's a really interesting M&A world that's happening in cyber today. So coming back to that, TAM, does it fit? What's the tech and how scalable is the technology? That's what we look for most of all. And that's why a lot of you are advisors for us. We surround ourselves with hundreds of advisors at NightDragon, so we can ask you questions like, do you like this technology? How much do you like? Is it scalable? Does it scale across oceans? Does it scale across hyperscalers? Does it scale across AI models? And how scalable is that tech? What you look for all the time too. And then it comes down to the team. You know, do they have the eye of the tiger? Does the team have the ability to execute? Because what happens at the end of the day for all these companies, it's the X factor, right? You know, one company, when I was CEO of FireEye, when I first got there was 5 companies who had almost the exact same tech at FireEye. We were about 10 million of revenue. I don't know if you remember Fidelis, Damballa, Lastline, these companies, and we're all about the same size. What was the difference between FireEye executing and them not? Go to market, partnerships with SHI and others. So scaling your engine with the eye of the tiger with the team made us grow from 10 million to $1 billion in revenue at FireEye, while all of them combined didn't make 100 million. So the difference is like partnering, go to market, team. That's the difference in investments. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you made an interesting comment. You were talking about best of suite, right? And even the dynamic between best in class and best of suite, understanding, you know, for a lot of us as we're looking at and evaluating the market, like, is this a survivable business? Is this stable? If I'm looking at early stage technology, they're doing something meaningful, you find it interesting, you think it solves a real problem for you, that's a real question that we're often asking. Like, is this business going to be around at the end of the 3-year contract I'm considering signing with them right now? And these are some of the factors that we would look at too as well. You know, another factor that you can consider at that is, you know, what does it mean for a company like that to have a top-tier investor? You know, what you should look for like that. When you know that, you know, NightDragon is backing one of those companies, what does that mean for the reputation, stability, and longevity of that business?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it also takes a village when investing. So NightDragon might lead an investment, but all the other investors in the syndicate have to be strong too, because inevitably there's a crisis or there's an opportunity. And it's interesting, democracy on boards, because sometimes that democracy can be good, and sometimes that democracy can be challenging, because it takes everybody to vote to make something happen. Yep. It's sometimes tricky to kind of get through it, but the syndicate's really important too. Yep.
Yeah, and then the value that come from the team, the investors, the board members that they can bring, the advisors, and the level of expertise. All of that has an impact on the potential success and longevity of that business. This is all things to consider in the cybersecurity world that we look at right now. All right, last question around investments.
We got to get customer questions too from them. Ask us tough ones.
Yeah, absolutely. How would you describe the current funding market around cybersecurity? Where is money flowing, you know, if it's flowing right now?
Go to the last slide. There's one just that shows a bunch of segments and stuff. Yeah, this is kind of cool, just to maybe talk about this. So what you're seeing here, there's one more. Go to the funding slide. I'll give you, there you go. You got a couple stats, maybe just to back this all up. But I mean, what an atmosphere for investments we're in. You know, cyber's never been bigger from an investment point of view. You can see some of the cybersecurity spending trends that are there. Then you can see the investment spend. In 2021, you had almost 30 billion go in, and this year, 2024, was 13 billion. But it was up from 9 billion the year before. So you had this mega 2020, 2021 window where tens of billions of capital were going into the cyber market. And now the last 3 years are almost the same size as it was before, but it's growing back in because there's new greenfields brought on by what? AI, right? So now AI become a massive tailwind to cyber, and you're seeing the fusion of cyber to all its adjacencies, which is a pretty cool trend as well. If you're an investor and you're looking at the hottest companies, who does cyber physical the best? I saw a stat you threw up there. I think Gartner said by 2030, if I got it wrong, 80% of the CISOs will have physical security, up from 40%. And there's a real reason for that, because the whole thing's merging. But in my opinion, it's not just physical and cyber, it's going to be physical, cyber, and supply chain. It's going to be physical, cyber, supply chain, and VIP protection. It's going to be all those, and throw in, industrial security. And sooner or later, the CISO's job is going to be really broad, and really, it's already really important, but it's really becoming all risk for a company technologically. And that is pretty cool if you're in the security field. I did a report last year, not to keep going on for a second, but it was amazing. We looked at these 700,000 board members and on all these Fortune 500 companies. And did you guys see what percent had a cyber expert on their board? Less than 2%. So less than 2% of the Fortune 500 has a cyber expert on its board. And cyber experts are pretty loose. It wasn't like you had to be a CISO to be in it. So you have very few. We need more. We need that voice in the boardroom, because many of the board members just don't understand the threats and risks that are happening. And suddenly we've got to improve that. So really interesting time with the investments, the M&A that's happening. Maybe we live in interesting times. We got it. So it's a curse and a blessing.
I think as the cybersecurity industry has continued to mature, right, and we have to remember, going back when I first left the military, came out in the commercial world, and I was looking for, where can I continue studying cyber? There weren't even cyber degree programs. This is 2004. To kind of date myself a little bit here, right? So
tell everybody your background. So they don't know it. Tell it for a second.
We'll get a lot of that into tomorrow. I get a whole session of my own. We'll get into that. We're here to talk to you this morning.
He served in intelligence and cyber, helped build his first company, understands capital markets, and now CTO here. So it's amazing watching him. So proud to be up here with you.
It's been an honor for sure. But as we watch this, we still have such young executive leadership with cyber experience that's out there. And so I think one of the things that we have to see, even from many of you guys who are up and coming in the space, is really beginning to build the business skills and some of the other knowledge that will give you the capability to sit in the room and understand cyber from a business perspective. We need you guys in those boardrooms. It's the people that will sit and take those seats, the other 98% of the Fortune 500 that need cyber experts sitting on those boards. That's some of you guys in the room right now. That's people who can go out and work on and get an MBA and place themselves in a position where you can help advise businesses on how they can align cyber strategy as an enabler to their business, and not just, let's block this from doing everything, right? Because that's often how, just frankly speaking, and we've both been in those boardrooms where a lot of the boards, they see cyber as, it's going to be this barrier to us and our go-to-market motion or agility, and they need someone in the room that can help them change the way they're thinking about, no, cyber can enable you to do more when you're doing it securely. Things that you would consider too big of a risk, we can actually contain that and help you get to market in some of those ways. And it's going to be important that it is this generation of cyber experts and practitioners that are developing into the people that can go into those boardrooms and help do that.
Very wise words. Enablement, right? This is what the board wants to hear, and you were just saying that. Going in and there just saying, we need more money because we got to block this or block that. How can you enable the business using digital capabilities and protection of those digital capabilities? I remember I've been on the Delta board for 14 years now. And most of you probably know the SEC typically recommends a tenure of 10 years or less on these boards. So it's quite an honor to be on this really cool company. The stock was $3.30 when I joined Delta's board. And it just came out of bankruptcy. And I remember sitting in the first board meeting like a deer in a headlight. like literally I'm like a technology CEO and they're telling me things like RASM, TRASM, CASM words and crude and like how we hedge crude and oil, and I literally felt like a fish out of water. But what do? You go into like hyper mode on learning and you do everything in your power to learn that business, because almost like a CISO coming onto a board, I was a high-tech CEO coming onto an industrial aviation company and I had to learn it. And still to this day, I don't know it like the CEO and the management know it, but boy, have I come a long way understanding the business and understanding how our digital efforts can make a difference. And if you follow Delta at all, you know, we're one of the leaders in the world introducing AI, free Wi-Fi, monetizing our Wi-Fi. We have hundreds of millions of passengers a year. How do we make money off of that? What can we do? That's enablement. And that's a little what I tried to bring that company, was help in that way, as opposed to saying, hey, stop doing that or stop doing this because it's a risk.
Yep.
That was the difference.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about innovation. You know, we have some really exciting areas of innovation happening right now, but specifically, you know, AI, quantum, data security. What do you think are some things that are coming that are really going to redefine the space for us?
Which area do you want to talk about? I mean, I'm excited about them all.
We could go down either one here.
I just made an investment, which was a cool company out of Israel called Classic. Have you guys ever heard of Class IQ? Take a look at this company. It's a very fascinating company. It's in quantum, but what it built was a hypervisor, essentially VMware-like hypervisor that can essentially distribute workloads and compute across multiple quantum platforms. So if you're familiar with some of the quantum companies, they build compute and storage. They've been able to concentrate massive amounts of compute into a platform, but they have a distribution problem. And so what this company came along was built an IDE that is almost like an OpenAI tool for quantum that helps you do code development, debugging, and then operating system management in a distributed way. And they created a lot of security by design into their platform such that they can do distributed workloads across the quantum. They're thinking like a security company at the time they developed it. What's amazing is this company is relatively young, but it is just on fire. And why are we starting to see it on fire? One big application area to start, which is PQC. So we're starting to see the advancements of quantum attacks on our encryption platforms. And if you guys study what your encryption methodologies are inside your companies, you're going to get a kind of a grim look that you probably have an AES 256 toolkit over here, a 512 one over here, and 16 different ones, all probably sold by RSA or somebody to you over the years, all app by app by app, all very vulnerable now to quantum. So we're starting to see the government put together legislation requirements to become quantum resistant. So watching the tools that can actually help you understand your encryption, fix your encryption, and then deploy quantum technology across it all, I once thought was a Horizon 2 problem, it's become Horizon 1 now. And so pretty cool company in that area. And the promise of quantum is really, really interesting. And what I'm finding even more interesting is watching the hyperscalers now not only put CPU blades under their hyperscaler and GPU blades under, but now QPU blades under their hyperscaler. And the energy requirements on QPUs is way less than the GPUs. So we're starting to find a lot of efficiency out of compute and storage with quantum as a blade. So I think what you're going to start to see is you buy your compute from a hyperscaler, you're going to choose options depending on the application, and that's all going to be here very soon. Some of you might have seen what Microsoft and AWS are doing in quantum. It's becoming production. So it's pretty cool to watch where that's at and the power of this in a way that, you know, I think just a year or two ago wasn't as realistic. So I'm excited about some of the quantum area, especially as it meets national security as well.
Yeah, quantum is not purely theoretical anymore. It's something I think as security practitioners, we all have to be up to date on, because if you read up the impact specifically for us, quantum, the impact on encryption is what you have to be able to understand, like practically understanding what does that mean, and effectively, and I don't mean to say it in a nihilistic point of view, but true general purpose, broadly available quantum compute makes all of the current encryption we're using obsolete. And so we have to be thinking forward a year and 2 years of when that happens. How are we building encryption that is secure and quantum ready too, as well, you were talking about?
And it's here now. I mean, it's happening now. Department of Defense is really forcing this, as is many of the agencies. So you're going to see a lot more of this coming at you pretty quickly here as it goes to critical infrastructure. So anyway, something to pay attention to. I've been reading my quantum books now at night. They can put you to sleep pretty fast, I have to admit. But it's fun to learn and read about them.
Yeah, I was taking a quantum class online from a university, and it was videos and instructions. Sometimes I'd have to watch the same lesson 4 times. I'd be like, I didn't get that. Just let's go again, one more time.
I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and I met with the founders, and they gave me this 308-page quantum book. And I literally got past the first 2 pages, and I need a glossary of all the terms, and I need to look it up, and it's a whole world to learn. It's fascinating how fast it's coming and what's going on. Anyway, it's cool stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things to know is that you don't need to thoroughly understand quantum computing from a quantum physics or a quantum mechanics level. What you do need to understand is the impact of quantum for the security industry. That's going to be really important as practitioners, that we know and understand what and how we're going to be impacted and what we have to do to secure it. Now, if you decide to dive down that rabbit hole, it is fascinating. It can actually, I think, be very beneficial to you in the future. But what do you need to know? You need to know the impact to security from an encryption perspective. You need to be ready to how we make a response for that over time.
Should we flip it to what's happening on the offense for a second? Because I'll give you one that keeps me up at night in a big way. The number one thing that's keeping me up at night, and it's not AI, it's EW. You know what EW is? Electronic warfare, right? So what are we starting to see happen in the world today is the advancements of RF, of radio frequency and spectrum management. And what's this going to start to do to the cyber world is attacks and disruptions using EW and electromagnetic pulsing. So we're watching this on the battlefield. You're seeing it today. I mean, drones are amazing. Autonomy of robotics are amazing. But watching the advancement of electronic warfare and the speed, and then the asymmetric theater we have to protect ourselves against electronic pulsing, because we won't shoot missiles in the Iron Dome for very long, or the Golden Dome if we build it. What we're going to be doing is directed energy to shoot down things in the air. But what we're also going to be doing is shooting directed energy at your computing environments, either to steal or disrupt. So you're watching the advancements of this capability. So I could read his phone's emitting an RF. If I can communicate on a Bluetooth or a near field communication, I can steal his data and even know it. I don't need malware to do it anymore. So I'm going to use airwaves to do it, RF to do it. And watching the advancement of offense here, I mean, it's now. So we're watching this, how do we defend against that? What kind of cyber domes can we build? How do we shield against RF? How do we protect compute against that? And we don't have a lot of defenses yet in that area. So kind of a scary one that's happening on the offensive side because of the war and the generation and inertia of that area. And we invested in a company that does what's called high performance microwave. It's something to take a look at, a company called Epirus, but it basically shoots drones down with directed energy. And it can shoot a pulse in the air and shoot 1,000 drones down with one pulse, no missiles. And this is the advancement. But eventually it'll be able to transmit energy from one location to another without a wire, because you can put a transmitter and a receiver. But you can also take out a lot of electronics in between. So it's a really fascinating world that's advancing really quickly that I think in the next couple of years, CISOs are going to be going, the hacking doesn't always come from what we traditionally think of as malware and remote access tools and things that are exploits or vulnerabilities. It's going to come from RF. So anyway, something to learn about.
And that's kind of coming full circle for those of us who've been around long enough to remember, guarding against what we call Tempest violations for any of you who worked in ComSec and cyber in the military, and kind of the EMF problems. This was something we used to have to certify and protect against, and now it's something that kind of fell off, and now we're seeing those attacks begin to pick back up again of being able to use read capabilities to pull data right off a device without ever having to actually break into the device. It's just giving you exactly what you want out of it, and that's bypassing the external protection mechanisms, bypassing encryption on the disk itself, because you're getting it in while it's operating in mode unencrypted, pull the data right off the wire. And so that's going to be some interesting things we're going to see happen in that world over the next couple of years
Showing
too as
your
well.
government background now.
A little bit there. All right, last question, and then we're actually going to open up to the audience for some Q&A. So what's one piece of advice you would leave with CISOs and CIOs, cyber execs in the room today, leading through this next wave of challenges and change?
What's the one piece of advice?
Yeah, if you could give one piece, what would you give?
I probably would say learn the business like we talked about before. I won't rehash that, but the opportunity for the CISO to rise in the boardroom is yours to go take, and the CIO. It's yours. We need you. You can feel it. I do a lot of board talks and advice and consulting. I mean, walking in there and communicating in their business terms with the risk is such a need in the world today, and you all have opportunities to be these people helping the leaders be more secure from the attackers that you all know every day. So that's probably the one. The other one I would love to see my biggest piece of advice is agentic. I've never seen a technology set that can really change the course of what we do every day in the cyber business. And I think this is an area to do pilots and testing, automation of SOAR and playbooks and all the things you were talking about. There's a lot of vendors, but getting in a position for autonomy, watching the companies, you alluded to these automated pen testers. I mean, we don't really need consultants doing pen testing anymore. These autonomy platforms are so good at it that they can understand an attack surface in seconds, automate the entire process, do it dynamically, continuously, and basically create ways to drop tokens into every CV or vulnerability in your attack surface so you can manage and monitor it before you can patch it. I mean, this is just autonomy coming at us.
Yep.
And it's coming in every way and form, so embrace this in a big way because it'll make your life easier. Because sure as I'm sitting here, the attackers are doing the same thing to you.
Absolutely. Well, great guidance. So we're going to
Is
open
it time
it up
for
for
cocktails
questions.
now after all that?
We have some
Those
people ready
questions.
to bring out some mics, so happy to take some questions from the audience, guys.
Give some
Go ahead
tough
and
questions.
Raise your hand up and we'll bring you a microphone. One right over here.
That was an excellent perspective from you, Dave. So I have a quick question. You said what keeps you at night is electronic warfare, right? So what are this? I would think with all the dependence in AI and data center, either private or public, should be part of critical infrastructure. What's your thought on influencing or somehow a countermeasure against nation state potentially knowing that's a weakness, attacking by Microsoft data center? Everyone depending on Microsoft, AWS, Google, all the huge private data center. Should they be part of the national defense strategy for critical infrastructure? That's my first question. And my second question I had is in your M&A slide, I noticed there's a downtick between 2022 in terms of M&A activity. Do you know why that is between 2022? And it seems like the trend is going up. So if I have an idea, is the M&A space pretty friendly now? Or you just put an AI in front of your startup and you can get funding? What's your thoughts on that?
That's a great set of questions. Jordan, feel free to add on, but you hit on something that's really important. I don't know how many of you study this, but there's a reason I joined the Exelon board. I don't know anything about energy. I didn't know anything about energy, but I decided I needed to learn a lot about energy for a minute. And why do we need to learn about energy? Because what's the biggest problem to AI and data centers? Energy. What's America's biggest problem right now? Energy. Our biggest single grid right now is 35 kilowatts of capability. Ask Jensen Huang how much he needs for his data centers. We're measured in gigawatts.
Yep.
We're off by factors on what we can produce in America. Because what did we do? Shut down all the coal and all the nuclear, and we were left with clean energy, and we weren't able to produce the energy wattage it required for the data centers. So guess where all the data centers are going? Not here. They're moving to the Middle East. They're moving to other locations. And where's all the national security interest in that data center is we don't want our data moving overseas if you're an American. Well, if you're a Saudi, you don't want it moving to America either. So the complexity of energy is so important in energy delivery right now that it's probably the #1 problem in critical infrastructure today. And what is Microsoft, AWS, Meta, all trying to figure out how to build these grids or co-locate their data center into the pipes of the grid. And this is tricky because who wants a nuclear or what's called SMR built right into your area? This is small modular reactors, nuclear reactors into your environment, your neighborhood. Nobody wants it. So a very complex national security challenge happening in AI and data centers as it meets energy problems that are out there. And absolutely, they're critical infrastructure for America and for all countries today. They become the most valuable companies in the world, and they have the most needs for energy and critical infrastructure that are out there, and that creates national security problems. On the M&A front in 2022, that's lumpy because of a couple big deals. Like if you look at Splunk Cisco or you look at a couple transactions, it's a little more normalized in that range, but it's coming back pretty heavily right now. We're seeing a lot of M&A. The problem that scared people off in 2021, a little bit in 2023, with the exception of one or two deals, was antitrust and getting through particularly the EU and other areas around the world. If you look at the Splunk Cisco transaction, it took well over a year to close it. You know how hard it is to do your max and MEEs as part of representing your company for a whole year, 4 quarters later? It's very difficult to get through antitrust and HSR. So deregulating this environment is going to help M&A a lot, and I think you'll see a spike in mergers and acquisitions in the market in the coming years because of that dereg. But look at Wiz, they just got an antitrust requirement with Google yesterday. So that's not good. That's a phase 2 review of that transaction, probably extending it to close to a year to close it. So now you have Wiz and Google trying to work together, but having trouble working together because of antitrust, and that deal could fall apart because of that. And if it fell apart because of that, you know, it's a tricky world. Who else is going to go try to do a big merger if Wiz can't get bought by Google? So it's an interesting environment for sure.
Do we have time for one more?
Question. Yeah.
Can we squeeze one more in? One last question.
What's the coolest company out there? I want to hear that one. You got to give me that feedback so I can invest in it.
Hey, how you doing? Dr. Williams, West Texas, educational sector. So with the fast speed that's moving in regards to AI, should we be focusing more on increasing the knowledge within our end users, or should we focus more on military martial law, like we're just going to block everything? They can't be in anything. It seems like the phishing attempts and everything is attacking the fact of the limited knowledge of the users in education in K-12. So we're not sure where to begin. More walls or more IQ in education?
Jordan, you answer that to start and all that.
Yeah. I mean, you're never going to see a failure to get return on investment in security awareness. Right? It's always going to pay dividends for you every single time. And so across the board, I actually will talk about this tomorrow. That's my presentation. It's called Brilliant at the Basics. Right? Even against the most sophisticated attacks, getting the basics right, the fundamentals like security awareness and the right policies, they matter. Now, are there some things that you should have controls in? Sure. But in your kind of environment, you know, the balance of awareness against controls is also the balance against, you know, do we cause them to go outside of the provided systems by putting too much control in place too as well? So you want to balance enablement and awareness with the right control levels, and finding that right balance is what will help you find some of the security you want. But the real ROI for you is probably going to be on security awareness, outside of trying to just lock everything down, because then you're going to have a bunch of people just trying to violate your controls.
Can't agree more with what you said, Jordan. You know, watching AI spear phishing now is off the chart, right? We're seeing the numbers go up, but the sophistication it's hard to even comprehend. I don't know if you saw, some of you might have seen it, maybe you were affected by it, but the president's chief of staff was breached, the phone, this is public, by the way, and the entire contact list was breached. And then an automated AI smishing attack sort of occurred from the contact list. And wow, was that real. It looked like it was the chief of staff of the president calling you, leaving you a voicemail to click on a dang link. And guess what was happening? The Fortune 500 CEOs were clicking on the link because they thought it was the chief of staff, basically, and it was a voicemail infecting your operating system. And basically, that's how automated, and they just hit everyone on the contact list. And then what happened later was there's death threats against the people the same way using automated voicemail, which was mostly false. But you start to get all this like attack vector of AI and spear phishing, and at the heart of it is education. So what you have to do is go talk to the CEO. You know, like you can't trust every voicemail coming in. You can't trust where the contact is calling you from. And you got to create that awareness, and it's a tricky thing. But wow, is AI creating a powerful tool with real deep fakes of voice capabilities, and really integrating that with cyber attack kits that we all know. So education, education, education.
Yep. Well,
thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Good
so much,
listening.
guys. Dave, thank you for joining us. Outstanding session.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.